Being a woman in medieval times? Yeah, not exactly a vibe. Imagine your worst Monday ever. Now stretch that across your entire life. Take away your rights, your freedom, basic hygiene, and toss in a high chance of dying during childbirth. Welcome to the Middle Ages. There was no such thing as me time or chasing your dreams. If you were lucky, you got married off at 14 to some guy twice your age who maybe didn't smell like a goat. If you were really lucky, he didn't blame you when the crops failed. Dating apps? Please, you were basically livestock with a dowry. Women didn't own land, they didn't vote. Most of the time, they couldn't even decide where they lived. You just hoped the local lord didn't notice you unless he wanted rent, free labor, or worse. And home life? Not exactly Pinterest-worthy. No cozy farmhouse aesthetic here. Women were hauling water, chopping firewood, raising kids, cooking over open flames, and maybe bathing once a year. All while the church reminded you to stay humble and obedient. Step out of line, speak your mind, or just look a little too independent. Boom. Witch trial. In this video, we're diving into what life was really like for women in the Middle Ages. It was rough, it was unfair, and honestly, it makes modern problems feel like luxury issues. Let's get into it. So, what did a typical day look like for a medieval woman? Let's start with the obvious. There was no such thing as free time. From the moment the sun came up, you were working hard, cooking, cleaning, collecting firewood, fetching water, taking care of children, tending animals, helping in the fields. And you weren't doing this in comfy leggings with a podcast in your ears. You were doing it in layers of itchy fabric, with dirt in places dirt should not be. And don't forget, none of this was optional. If you didn't pull your weight, someone else suffered. That someone was usually your own kids, or you. Probably both. Oh, and if you were pregnant, which you probably were, often, good luck. No painkillers, no hospitals, no prenatal vitamins, just hope, prayer, and maybe a midwife with a 50-50 success rate. Even childbirth was considered your job. If you died during it, well, that's just part of being a woman. Next, now let's talk marriage, if you can even call it that. Women didn't marry for love. They married because their families arranged it, usually to gain land, settle debts, or move up one tiny, miserable notch in the social ladder. Your opinion? Irrelevant. Some girls were married off before they even hit puberty. The goal was simple: make babies, and preferably sons, lots of them. Your worth was basically tied to how many heirs you could produce, and whether you survived long enough to do it again. And once you were married, your husband had total control over you. You couldn't own property, you couldn't refuse him. In many cases, you legally were his property. Romantic, right? You'd think after all that, society would at least give women some credit. Nope. Women did almost everything: farming, weaving, baking, brewing, midwifery, even running small shops or inns in some towns. But most of that work was either unpaid or went entirely unrecognized. And if you were poor, it was even worse. You were basically doing hard labor from cradle to grave, often while malnourished and exhausted. Meanwhile, the guys got to swing a sword, go to war, or sit around deciding laws, many of which were about what women couldn't do. So yeah, not exactly an equal partnership. So, let's say you were a medieval woman who didn't quite fit the mold. Maybe you were outspoken. Maybe you didn't want to marry that 40-year-old goat farmer. Maybe you liked herbs a little too much. Congratulations, you were probably about to be punished. The medieval justice system wasn't just harsh, it was wildly biased. Women could be fined, flogged, shamed publicly, or worse, for things that wouldn't even raise an eyebrow today. Gossiping too much? Shame. Wearing the wrong clothes? Shame. Defying your husband? double shame. And then there were the witch hunts, a total disaster, cocktail of fear, superstition, and deeply rooted misogyny. Being labeled a witch didn't take much. Had a miscarriage? Witch. Your neighbor's cow died after you looked at it funny? Witch. Knew how to make herbal tea? Definitely a witch. Trials weren't fair either. They'd throw you in a river to see if you floated. If you did, you were guilty. If you sank, you were innocent. But, also dead, so either way, fun times. And the really dark part? A lot of these accusations came from within communities, people turning on each other, sometimes just to get revenge or settle petty grudges. Women accusing other women. Men accusing women they feared or couldn't control. Once the word witch was out there, it was almost impossible to walk it back. It was the ultimate shut up button. Oh, you have opinions. You must be evil. If you thought medieval laws were brutal, wait till you meet their best friend, the church. Religion in the Middle Ages wasn't just about faith, it was the ultimate control system. It ran the schools, made the rules, and basically turned guilt into a full-time lifestyle. And for women, it was a non-stop performance of purity, silence, and servitude. The church's golden standard: be like the Virgin Mary. Quiet, obedient, and preferably invisible unless you were miraculously giving birth without sin. You weren't just expected to behave, you were expected to carry the moral weight of everyone around you. If a man sinned, guess whose fault that was? Yep, yours. Women were seen as naturally weak, easily tempted, and spiritually inferior. Your only paths in life were to marry and obey, or join a convent and obey quietly behind stone walls. And even that option cost money, that's right. Celibacy came with a dowry. You had to pay to be left alone. And when you live in a world where suffering is framed as holy, you stop asking whether things should be different. You just survive and hope the next life is better. So yeah, being a woman in medieval times, it sucked. You were overworked, underfed, underappreciated, and constantly one bad day away from being called a witch. You had no rights, no voice, and no escape, unless you were lucky enough to be born into wealth. And even then, life wasn't exactly a fairy tale. But despite all of that, women found ways to endure. They held communities together, passed down knowledge, and carved out tiny moments of freedom in a world that gave them none. If you've ever complained about slow Wi-Fi or a bad Tinder date, just remember, at least no one's accusing you of sorcery for growing herbs in the backyard. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this peek into medieval misery, hit that like button, subscribe for more dark history deep dives. Stay loud, stay curious, and be very, very glad you weren't born in the 1300s.